Good afternoon, everyone. Good evening, technically. It is Wednesday. It's a week, and it's time for the weekly Whitmer Wednesday. I love alliteration. Today, I've had some people reach out during my last few lives, and they've said they want to hear more about what the state of defiance is and also how it relates to certain things. And also, I've had people reach out about the new climate tyranny bill, which is what today's going to be about. What it is, what it's about, why it's passing, why are they doing this, what's the incentive. And I'm really here to break down from an independent perspective these new climate change bills coming through New York. And it actually can let me segue into why I refuse to leave New York, even though New York State politicians, political class, and government hates me. Why I refuse to leave. And I can segue into why this is happening across the board, not just with climate change, but with a lot of things. So before I begin my timer, before I start, because like I said, I like to keep these to 15 minutes. We are live on Facebook at Duane J. Whitmer, and we are live at Twitter at Whitmer for NY27. My Twitter handle is a throwback to my failed congressional campaign back in 2020. It was great. I lost. I had a great time. So we're going to start the timer. And I'm going to begin this meeting, this little speech, this little day, with a warning. Today's video is going to be a little intense, and it's going to offend people, and I'm okay with that because I have no plans on running for office anytime soon. Because of part of the reason why these bills get passed is because people don't want to do anything on their own. They want to outsource all their problems through government solutions, and this is how we get bills like this. And quite frankly, any politician that wants to give the power back to the people, really give it back to the people, not say he's going to, looking at you, GOP, they get pushed out because the politicians have a good grift going. I mean, and this climate change bill is an example, a perfect example of the grift on both the left and the right. Republicans, you're not innocent in this. You are absolutely part of this grift, especially in New York State. So to sum it up, New York State passed this climate change bill. And in it, there's a lot of things: banning gas-powered vehicles, banning wood stoves, banning gas stoves in new builds, a lot of really weird stuff that really has no impact on climate change. And look, you want to admit climate change is real or not. I don't really care about that. That's not what I'm here to debate. I'm here to talk about why politicians do what they do. Why does the political class and progressive big government, why is that a pervasive part of society? This bill is a great example. And actually, I think the last 4 years have been a phenomenal case study in people outsourcing their problems through government. This started during COVID. And this is where this is going to get a little heavy. I apologize. COVID happened. And people said, oh shit, people are dying. Somebody should do something. Government, help me. Now, look. People died during COVID. I'm not going to say it's not. I'm not going to say COVID was sent from China. That's not what happened. Look, people died. Now, the government does a handful of things very well. It taxes things, it bombs things, it imprisons things, and it creates a bureaucracy very, very well. That's all the government does. If you break down what the United States government and New York State government does in a whole, they tax, they imprison, they bomb, and they create a massive bureaucracy of red tape. Boom, done. That is it. They're not creating, they're not innovating, they're not discovering, they're not building. Well, you say, well, they build the roads, Duane. No, people build the roads through government extortion. Don't be stupid. Government does 4 things well: build, bomb, imprison, bureaucracy. I should think of a word that begins with B for imprison. And then I could do the 4 Bs: build, bomb, bureaucracy, imprison. Not the point. That's all the government does well. So COVID happened, and people were dying. And people said, government, help us. So what did they do? They used their bureaucracy to essentially cause lockdowns and imprison you in your home to 2 weeks to flatten the curve. Now, people still died, right? And there's the government didn't do enough. People are still dying. Well, of course people are dying. The United States is one of the most unhealthy states the United States is one of the most unhealthy countries in the world. We have a massive obesity problem. We have a massive health problem. People eating processed foods. Now, the government couldn't come out and say, hey, if you don't want to die of COVID, take better care of yourself, because that's going to enrage a lot of people. So what they did was they did a knee-jerk reaction of locking things down, shutting down businesses. making you walk one way through stores, following stickers, and closing down Walmart after 10 p.m., and everyone was safe and no one died, right? That's an example of government, people outsourcing their fears and problems through government, and government taking advantage of it through whatever solution they see fit. Gun violence is another similar issue. Hey, government, people are getting shot. Do something. Government says, again, what can they do? Imprison, bomb, tax, and bureaucracy. They make a massive new bureaucracy. They add taxes on firearms, and they imprison people for owning a firearm. That's it. Does it have any impact on gun violence? As evidenced by the mass shooting in Buffalo in May, in which the shooter openly admitted he picked Buffalo, New York because of the African-American population. A, he didn't like black people, and B, they're mostly unarmed. He thought he would be shooting fish in a barrel, and he picked New York State because of its gun laws. So, I mean, no, more gun control did not solve that issue. But again, it's more people that are upset with gun violence. Instead of saying, we should figure something out and improve the underlying issues in society, they just go to politicians who are more than eager to do whatever it takes to get your vote and donation and say, fix the problem. Politicians pass gun control, zero impact on shootings, but everyone feels safer. So now we get to climate change. And people are worried about climate change. So the politicians, again, what are they good at? Imprisoning, bombing, bureaucracy, and taxing. They impose carbon taxes. They still bomb people in the Middle East, which, by the way, one of the biggest polluters in the world is the military-industrial complex. Now, there's a way to solve some of this climate change issue is stop invading foreign countries and blowing up poor people, stop blowing up poor brown people in the Middle East, and then we could actually help reverse climate change. But, they can't stop doing that because, your donations and their donations depend on that. So we're back to now, what do we do? So the government has to have a knee-jerk reaction because there are people that are upset about climate change. And instead of solving the problem, such as doing better with wasting products, you doing better at cutting back your carbon, footprint, cutting rules and regulations that allow people to homestead, cutting rules and regulations that allow people to have chickens and their own crops, instead of actually focusing on solving the problem, they just rule by decree pass a law that says, this is a climate change bill, we're banning gas stoves, boom, we did something. This is another indicative problem of outsourcing your fears through government. It's not going to solve the problem. It really isn't. But there's a large percentage of the population in this country. I would say 80% of this country supports big government to solve their problems. And both the right and the left does it. Look at the left does it with healthcare, with gun violence, with climate change. The right does it with immigration, with abortion, with other things. There's more, and I'm just drawing a blank. Both sides are, supporting massive big government when they're in charge and when it's solving their problems. All those problems still exist, which you'd think they would wake up and realize, hey, more government isn't the solve here. It's actually funny. When I did my State of the State response, one of these Bernie Sanders fans, wrote this like stroked out response to my State of the State response, and it was like super long. I wish I had it, and it was really funny. And my response was, you wanted big government existed, now you're mad at big government, and your solution is more government. This is an asinine and absolutely mentally deficient belief. You have a problem, so you support big government. Big government does big government things, and then you're mad that big government does big government things, so your only solution is voting for big government to fix the big government problems of big government. If that's your belief system, you're part of the problem. You are leading this country over an edge. And that's a majority of people in this country. So we got this climate change bill that is passed, and then the Republican response, Rob Orr, actually it's going on right now. Ramblin' Robbie here. Rob Orr, who's a New York State senator, who's the leader of the Senate Republican group, which I'm convinced the Senate Republicans are just Cuomo-esque Democrats at this point, because their State of the State response and their programs were more government, more spending, more tax, more regulations. The Senate Republicans are essentially Democrat light at this point. And Rob Orr's meeting in Lackawanna today to sign a petition to say you're pissed. It's not going to solve the problem. No matter how many petitions you give to Kathy Hochul, no matter how many times you go to listen to Rob Orr speak, it's not going to solve the problem. If you want to resist the climate tyranny in New York State, here are two solutions. One's easier than the other. But before, I'll get to that in a minute here. Let me finish why the GOP is a failed organization in New York State. This bill was passed in 2019. It is currently 2023. So the Republicans have had 4 years to do something about it and have essentially been a doormat to progressivism in New York State. Now they're using it to their advantage. Why? Because the Democrats use this bill to get elected in Democratic areas. Now the Republicans are using this bill to get people mad to keep voting for them in Republican areas with no incentive to change this bill. So politically, there is no support there. There's no help coming through politicians. Rob Ortt isn't going to save the day here. And if you believe he is, I have oceanfront property in sale for Iowa. Just PM me your social security number and your routing and account number, and I'll send you the deed. So Rob Ortt, the Republican stance is, well, we're going to resist it by doing a petition drive. Dude, not only did it already pass in 2019, New York State voted on it on the back of the ballot this year, and it passed. And the Dems have a supermajority. So even when you try to bring it up, it's never going to get through committee because the Democrats have the supermajority control in New York State. Any political chance of fixing this is out the window. It's not going to happen. So there's underlying things. Now, what can you do? What can we do to stop this? Well, step one is all these counties and towns. This is where the GOP could. Now, in theory, this is where the GOP could step up and actually accomplish something. Fun fact, they will not. The GOP is a useless organization. It's actually not. The GOP is a jobs program. That's it. But you guys, some of you will learn that. What can these Republican-controlled areas do? Simple. Start changing the permitting structure. Start making it easier to install your own items. So, for example, in Hamburg, where I live in Hamburg, New York, you need a permit to install a hot water tank. You need to get a plumbing permit to do any sort of plumbing. They don't specify what kind of plumbing you need, but installing hot water tank is one of them. You need a permit to install certain things. Start putting pressure on your county and town town councilmen to start cutting back on the permitting process. It's a win for small government. It's cutting funding to progressive big government. And now C added A. So A, B, and C is, guess what? Now you don't have to ask the town for permission to install a gas stove or a gas hot water tank. So they're not going to know what you're doing, because pretty soon what's going to happen is they're not going to give you permits for gas hot water tanks. And there's a start. Start putting pressure on your towns. Start putting pressure on your localities to not enforce it. Non-enforcement is a form of nullification. Look, there aren't enough state police because they're facing a recruiting shortage, thank God. There aren't enough state police in this state to enforce these laws. They can't go door to door and knock on your door and ask you for if you have a gas stove. They can't do it. They don't have the numbers. It's going to take them forever. There aren't enough police. There aren't enough enforcement arms to enforce progressive big government. So start using that to your advantage. Just don't do it. I have no intent on changing my house from gas to electric until I absolutely have to. I have zero intent on doing that. I will keep my gas stove and my hot water tank, and pretty soon, probably in 2029, I will get a new stove and a new hot water tank to make sure it lasts another 20 years. I will pay someone off the books to install it. I will commit permit fraud. I'm not going to get a permit, so Hamburg can, deal with that when they see fit. And I'm just going to do it. And that's another part of the solution is just ignore the law. You don't have to be as open about it as I am, because you don't want the state to send their armed guards to shoot you in the face, which is a risk I take when I do stuff like this. I understand, but really, just do not comply. Say no. And, put pressure on local police departments, local sheriffs, local code enforcement officers to not enforce it. Now, some will. In Hamburg, where I am, the code enforcement officer makes pretty good money. He will 100% try to enforce this stuff because he gets a great government paycheck to do it. You're going to have some issues there. You have to pick your battles. But in a lot of these red areas that are Republican-controlled towns, Republican code enforcement officer, Republican town councilman, Republican sheriff, Republican police, look, start putting pressure on them to pick a side. It doesn't have to be violent or aggressive. Just say, look, if you look the other way, that's how you change public opinion. Now, lastly, one issue you may run into is they're going to put pressure on the utilities companies, and that's going to be an issue. They're going to put pressure on the utilities companies because the utilities companies get a lot of government money and government funding. That's going to be our next battle. But what I'm hoping is mass non-compliance, mass non-enforcement, mass resistance should lead the utility companies to think twice. It really should. They have a government forced monopoly, so they're kind of going to err on this. They're going to side with government It's funny, libertarians, when I ran for Congress, I was called a fascist by the progressive left. And how the utilities companies work in New York is pretty close to fascism, where it's combined of state power through corporation, pretty close to the definition of fascism. Yeah, they're not complaining about that. But that's what you get when you're fighting uneducated people. But it is what it is. But look, that's the thing. We got these bills coming out of New York, and they're frustrating, and they're really, really stupid. And my opinion is, do not comply. Non-enforcement, non-compliance leads to nullification. Albany can pass whatever bills they want through their supermajority, and if a good chunk of the country, or pardon me, a good chunk of the state just says no, thank you, they don't have the manpower to enforce it. Simple as that. And that I will end with why people ask me, Duane, why do you stay in New York? New York State is a shithole. Why are you still there? I'm still here for two reasons. Reason number one, as goes New York, as goes the rest of the country. New York tends to lead the country in things, and then they try them in other parts of the country. So, look, I can move to Tennessee, I can move to Texas, I can move to Pennsylvania, but eventually these things are going to go there. And if I can be on the front lines of resisting progressive big government, I'd like to stay here as long as I can, because I think it drives a thorn in the side of these progressive politicians when, look, Kathy Hochul and Andrew Cuomo openly admitted they want conservatives and right-leaning people to leave the state. And they did. They did. And Kathy Hochul wins re-election. They want their opponents to leave. I refuse to. I will fight it out until the very last minute, because this makes them pretty pissed off and uncomfortable. No matter what people go through, the propaganda machines, the forced compliance, the progressive government laws, I'm still here and not complying, and that's got to drive them insane. So I look forward to fighting that battle on the front lines, and I think Western New York will have a big impact in whatever happens next, whether it's peaceful separation or not. New York, Western New York will be on the front lines of that. And I'm when I say front lines, I don't necessarily mean literally, but I do mean the front lines of the resistance, and I'm here for it. To wrap up, one more thing, why I don't leave New York State is because I can lead the resistance other ways as well. So, for example, I'll talk about this next week, is Whitmer tax defense and our tax assessment challenges that we're doing that directly impacts revenues to local towns and counties. It's a way to resist progressivism without having to do much. So, look, there's other things you can do here in New York to lead a resistance that's not necessarily electoral. I think that New York State is a failed experiment and will continue to fail. But I'm willing to stick it out as long as I can to watch it fail and kind of ride out the ship for a little bit. So that's this week's Weekly Whitmer. Just to summarize, New York State's passing some pretty insane climate tyranny bills. And my response is resist. And also go to my store, which is Whitmer for Liberty, and buy my Come and Take It stuff. Satirical, tongue-in-cheek merchandise. Makes me feel better about myself. Look, Kathy Hochul wins an election. I make memes and merchandise and laugh at her. It's what I do. But thank you guys for tuning in. Next week, we're going to talk about non-electoral resistance. That's what next week's will be about. Things that you can do even when you lose. I'm good at that. I lost twice in 2020, once in 2021. So, I had to plan a better strategy of what I can do if electoral politics has failed. That will be my next week's meeting, Whitmer for Liberty, Weekly Whitmer, Wednesday speech talk plan thing. So thank you guys for tuning in. If you don't mind, I am 2 followers away from 3,400 followers on Facebook. If you could invite 2 friends to like this page, and then I can be at 3,400, so I can feel a little bit better about myself. That would be great. Thank you guys for tuning in. I hope you guys have a great week. Keep up the good fight, and I will see you.